What if I were to tell you of giants that once trod the earth, beings of such gravitas that they actually opposed the will of gods and men, constructing a legacy out of chaos, rebellion, and destruction? And what if their story didn't actually end with their fall, but is one continuing to shape the spiritual battle between good and evil today? In this video, we are going to unseal the mysteries of the Book of Giants, an ancient, forgotten text that shows the secrets of the Nephilim, their war with heaven and how their spirits still affect the world in demon manifestation. But most importantly, could these giants actually hold the answer to some spiritual warfare faced by modern-day people? Stay with me until the end, and together we will travel not only into ancient times, but also see how all these giants' contributions continue to affect us right now. The Book of Giants: Origins, Discovery, and Significance. The Book of Giants, along with other archaeological findings like the Dead Sea Scrolls, is a rediscovered ancient text. This book, extant only in fragments and written in various languages like Aramaic, Middle Persian, and Sogdian, presents a dramatic view of the Nephilim giants born from the union between fallen angels and humans. The present book deals with the creation, lives, and further fall of the Nephilim. It was once part of the Manichaean religious tradition and related to the greater Enochic corpus. Poor fragments of this have been pored over by theologians and historians alike, trying to piece together just what the narrative is and what its place is in the ancient Jewish apocalyptic literature. Though incomplete, the Book of Giants is a rich source on the early Jewish conception of spiritual rebellion, cosmic order, and divine judgment. Scholars such as J.T. Millick, initially crucial in the translation of parts of the Book of Giants from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and Lauren T. Stukenbrook, one who has elaborately researched Enochic traditions, marshal their scholarship here to reinforce the view that this book is complementary to the Book of Enoch in the elaboration of the story of the Nephilim and their tragic end. In the eyes of the ancients, the Jews considered the Nephilim the embodiment of the utmost rebellion against the will of God, since they were symbolic of both physical and spiritual consequences resulting from trespassing the boundaries set by God. Millick's work on the Book of Giants showed that those giants, born from the forbidden union of the Watchers with human women, had begun to create chaos on earth. Having superhuman strength and knowledge, these beings used their powers to dominate and corrupt humanity. Directly related to the cause of the Great Flood, wherein God wanted to clean the earth of their influence, were their activities. Millick notes that the fragmented nature of the Book of Giants makes it difficult to provide a full and continuous narrative. However, what remains is a powerful testimony to the ancient Jewish belief in cosmic warfare, the idea that the physical world was constantly being influenced by spiritual beings who sought to disrupt the divine order. The giants in this context serve as both literal and symbolic representations of this struggle. Scholars like Andrei Orlov have expanded on Millick's analysis, arguing that the Book of Giants highlights the tension between divine and demonic forces. The giants are not simply antagonists in a mythic tale. They represent the very essence of spiritual rebellion. Their actions bring about the destruction of both their race and much of humanity, serving as a cautionary tale about the consequences of defying God's will. The Watchers. The fallen angels and their part in creation. The Nephilim story actually begins with a group of angels known as the Watchers, assigned to watch over and guide humanity. Sometimes referred to in the Bible as sons of God, these angels are those originally meant to stay out of the affairs of the world of men, to observe it from their heavens. This mission went dark as they became enchanted by human women. Altogether, 200 Watchers under the leadership of Samyaza descended to earth and took human wives in defiance of their divine mandate. That was an act that had reached a wider perspective. It signaled not only the creation of the Nephilim, but the beginning of a cosmic rebellion that would have far-reaching effects on both the spiritual and physical realms. In his book entitled The Unseen Realm, theologian Michael S. Heiser provides an account of the theological implications of such a rebellion on the part of the Watchers. According to Heiser, the descent to earth that was made by the Watchers was not at all one of lust or desire, but an act of overt rebellion against the divine order. By intermingling with humans, The Watchers blurred lines separating the divine and mortal, a transgression that would have catastrophic consequences. Heiser postulates that their rebellion seems to reflect the greater cosmic rebellion against the Lord. The angels, charged to guide men, ended up satisfying their desires with women with the creation of the hybrid race that was neither humans nor divine. This is a violation of the boundaries in the cosmos and presents a well-cemented theme in the ancient Jewish apocalyptic literature, where mixing realms frequently leads to catastrophe. The Book of Giants develops this theme by highlighting that the actions of the Watchers degraded not only humanity, but themselves too. Those who were once powerful and respected were now outcasts, beings that have abandoned their divine purpose and faced the consequences of their rebellion. The creation of the Nephilim, beings of immense power and corruption. The Nephilim were giants in stature and in the capacity for destruction, born of the Watchers and human women. They were exceedingly powerful beings, intelligent entities, having both the physical prowess of their human mothers and the supernatural abilities of their angelic fathers. But instead of using their gifts for good, the Nephilim became tyrants, spreading violence and chaos throughout the earth. In the ancient Jewish psyche, the Nephilim represented the ultimate punishment for the rebellion against the will of God. They embodied spiritual and moral deterioration, creatures who had come into being through an act of disobedience to divine law. John Collins asserts in his work The Apocalyptic Imagination that the Nephilim represent the disruption of natural order. They exist independently of the patterns and bounds of creation and serve as one constant reminder of the perils of defiance against God's will. The Nephilim further contributed to the corruption of humanity by teaching men forbidden knowledge, such as that concerning weaponry, sorcery, among other practices that were to remain hidden from mortal men. Equipped with this knowledge and physical strength, the Nephilim dominated the earth, characterized by widespread violence and chaos. Theologian Andrei Orlov said in analyzing Enochic literature, "The theme in which the Nephilim's role of corruptors is viewed to be much more central. Their very existence was a corruption of the divine plan, and their actions only further deepened that corruption." The Nephilim were not merely physical giants, but they were spiritual and moral giants, towering above humankind by their capability of evil. The Nephilim were not only giants in the physical sense, but also giants in the spiritual realm. They were unique in the ancient world because of their hybrid nature, combining the divine with the human. This is what made them so dangerous, for such a hybridity made them preeminently able to act within both the spiritual and the physical realms. Scholar Lauren Stuckenbruck, in his work The Myth of Rebellious Angels, suggests that the hybrid nature of the Nephilim denotes a dissolution of borders when divine beings invade the terrestrial world. This is one of the recurring themes in apocalyptic literature, whereby the lines between heaven and earth become blurred. In the same vein as their fathers, the Watchers, the Nephilim, are symbolic of the dangers involved in crossing the lines from heaven to earth. By producing the Nephilim, the Watchers disrupted the natural order of things, hence, chaos and destruction were witnessed on a cosmic scale. Enoch's role in the story, the messenger of godly judgment. In the Book of Giants, Enoch is an important agent of the divine judgment. The translated Enoch, who did not die but was taken to heaven, Genesis 5:24, was to mediate between God and the fallen Watchers and their giant offspring. He is charged with messages of warning and judgment, giving the giants a last opportunity to repent before destruction. Annette Yoshiko Reed, in her work Fallen Angels and the History of Judaism and Christianity, underlines the importance of Enoch as a figure of righteousness and obedience. The Watchers acted against God's will, whereas Enoch was obedient, and it is just this obedience which gained him his position as a divine messenger. Reed argues that Enoch balances out the rebellion of the Watchers in his role within the Book of Giants, seeking in contrast to them to lead humanity back onto the path of righteousness. In the Book of Giants, his giants, seeing that their end was near, in despair called upon Enoch. Mahweh was sent to find Enoch, one of the giants, supposing he would have a way out for them. However, the message of Enoch was straightforward. The giants had crossed the mark and judgment from heaven was close at hand. The inclusion of Enoch here speaks volumes concerning divine justice. That Enoch was a kind of mediator between heaven and earth underlines the idea that divine judgment, while sure, is also just. The giants had been given opportunities for repentance, but persisted in rebellion, which sealed their doom. Visions of destruction. The dreams of the giants. Perhaps the most interesting part of the Book of Giants is the succession of dreams the Nephilim have. Through great use of symbolic imagery, they foresee their own destruction. One of these dreams involves a stone tablet falling into water and all of its writing being washed away, an obvious sign of the imminent flood. Apocryphal interpreters, such as Andrei Orloff and George Nicholsburg, have interpreted such dream visions as prophetic. The water most obviously stands for the Great Flood, soon to purge Earth of the giants and their corrupting influence. And the wiping off of the writing from the tablet most clearly stands for the utter eradication of the giants. Their names and their memory and their power are to be blotted from Earth. Another dream is of a garden with trees, where an angel descends and cuts down all the trees except 3. This would, in turn, be interpreted as in the previously discussed vision by Noah's survival and his 3 sons, whereas the rest of the world was drowned and consumed by the floodwaters. Such dreams remind one of the impossibility to escape God's judgment. Be it as powerful as giant, one cannot outrun his actions. What the giants dreamt of wasn't warning but a vision of an already ordained course of events. The dreams also bring into relief the fear and anxiety of the giants about their fate. Super powerful though they be, they are plagued by their knowledge that it is their rebellion which has placed them on their path of doom. Probably one of the most renowned scholars on apocalyptic literature and author of the Gnostic Gospels, Elaine Pagels, also connects the giants' dreams with the psychic turmoil caused by their rebellion. It was these beings who, having sinned against God's will, had to atone for such sin. The archangel intercession, war in heaven with the giants. For their unrepentant use of violence against earthly creatures, God commissions the services of 4 archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. This is the moment of the major cosmic battle between heaven's forces and the rebellious giants, a highly dramatic moment in the Book of Giants. In Jewish apocalyptic literature, archangels were viewed as agents of divine retribution. Michael is the leader of God's armies fighting against rebellious factions to preserve the divine order. His part in the Book of Giants, defeating the Nephilim, is typical of his role as the final arbiter of justice. According to the analysis of Jewish angelology by Peter Schaeffer, the intervention of the archangels in the Book of Giants serves to indicate the triumph that divine order attains over chaos. As physically powerful as they may be, giants are no match for heaven. Therefore, the archangels, with their divine weapons and fire, were in a position to subdue them and put a stop to the acts of terror they had committed. Not to be outdone, even Gabriel, the so-called angel of God, joins this conflict as well. For his part, as defending substitution by Simon Gathercole argues, even Gabriel's move against the Nephilim was illustrative of one thing, that God's judgment is never light. To their own mind, giants may have considered themselves as invincible. Defeat through archangels' hands, however, indicates that nobody can escape from his or her actions in case God's will has been defied. Raphael and Uriel are both standing on an equal footing in this cosmic combat, though not so well known in the more recent traditions of Christianity. Raphael symbolizes the second creation with regard to the disaster wrought by the giants when a world overseas is ruptured. The light of Uriel, being the angel of wisdom, shines through the myriad details of such a situation to ensure that under divine law, justice is fairly executed. The giants' civil war, a prelude to divine judgment. Even before the archangels had been sent down to destroy the Nephilim, the giants had already planted in their own camp the seeds of their own destruction. The paranoia, fear, and guilt within them, as mentioned earlier, had caused a giant-like civil war among them, further weakening them from inside. When it came time to do so, the archangels easily executed divine judgment upon them. As John J. Collins remarks in his book, The Apocalyptic Imagination, the giants' civil war is an image consistent with a familiar apocalyptic theme. Evil, is essentially self-destructive, unable to coexist peacefully, being driven by their lust for power and their fear of divine retribution. The giants broke into various factions. Their internal fights reflected the growth of moral decomposition as they turned against each other in a hopeless quest for survival. This civil war among giants is both literal and figurative in terms of their fall. On one level, it represents the giants' inability to sustain the power they had seized through rebellion. On another level, it reveals the bigger picture of cosmic disproportion. Once the divine law has been breached, there is the breakdown of natural order with all the unvirtues it spawns in chaos and destruction. According to the theologian Christopher Rowland, internal strife among giants recalls the fact that the rebellion against divine authority cannot last for an infinite period of time. The giants, born from an act of defiance, were born to destroy themselves. The Civil War is also a sort of precursor of the final judgment. As such, it underlines the self-destructive nature of evil and the impossibility of holding for long the power grounded on rebellion. The Great Flood, a divine cleansing of the earth. The climax of the story about the giants is when the Great Flood purifies the earth of this corruption via God. The flood is not a punishment for the sin in mankind, but rather to clean the world from the giants, as they had defiled a world which was to be natural. Indeed, within the biblical tradition, this flood has often been associated with both destruction and renewal. As theologian James Barr did point out in his study Biblical Words for Time, through the flood creation does receive a second start. Giants existed, incredibly powerful, yet they could not survive the floodwaters. Their physical strength proved irrelevant against the overwhelming force of divine judgment. It also has other meanings, symbolic ones, apart from the real physical damage it causes. As scholar George Nicholsberg comments on Word Enoch, the floodwaters are an example of divine purification. They washed away giants that interfered with the balance of creation so that the earth could return to a harmonious state. The flood was an act of punishment and mercy that renewed the cleansing of the world from corruption that had seized it. Theologically, the flood represents God's judgment inevitable. Giants rebelled against the will of God and wreaked havoc in the world. Eventfully, they were responsible for their actions. New Testament scholar N.T. Wright, in his work about biblical eschatology, indicates that the story of the flood is a kind of prelude to the bigger story about redemption within Christian theology. So also here, the flood swept away the corrupting iniquity of the Nephilim, just as Christ's sacrifice gives to humanity the opportunity to wash away the filth of sin and start afresh. The Nephilim's spirits, from giants to demons. Among the many interesting things that are found in the Book of Giants is the final outcome of the Nephilim after their physical death. As their bodies were destroyed through the flood, the spirits within them did not really cease to exist. Rather, these unshackled spirits of old became what we now think of as demons, continuing on in many subtle and destructive ways their influence in the world. For scholar Lauren T. Stuckenbrook in his book The Myth of Rebellious Angels, such a transformation of the Nephilim into demonic entities makes them representatives of the persistence of evil beyond physical destruction. Though giants were destroyed upon the face of the earth, their spirits continued to be there as spiritual beings striving to corrupt humankind from behind the scenes. Constrained earlier in flesh, their spirits worked among humans in the spiritual realm of manipulation and tempting of humans. This view is rooted in traditional Jewish and Christian belief concerning the origin of demons as spirits of the Nephilim. Demons, among many Christian traditions, are believed to be spirit entities of fallen angels or other rebellious beings cast out of heaven. The Nephilim, being the children from fallen angels, fit into this category. Their spirits, now without their bodily containers, continued the rebellion against God's plan by further seducing and deceiving humans. This transformation from physical giants to spiritual forces of evil is not without heavy theological implication. In his theological investigation of spiritual warfare, theologian Gregory Boyd claimed that such persistence of the Nephilim spirits reflects a continued struggle of good versus evil. While giants may have been defeated in the physical realm, their influence remains, acting as a constant reminder of the ever-present threat of rebellion against divine authority. The rediscovery of the Book of Giants, a fragmented history. It wasn't until the 20th century that this lost Book of Giants finally began to be pieced together with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Such scrolls, found in the caves of Qumran, provided a lot of clues about the religious beliefs and apocalyptic literature of ancient Jewish communities. J.T. Millick is generally regarded as one of the authorities on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and was thus very much involved in interpreting and translating the fragments from the Book of Giants. It would be Millick's work that would uncover many parts of the text. A millennium-long secret thus came into being. Much was unknown or lost, but what was left for people to use gave insight into the larger story of the Nephilim and their destruction. It is through this understanding that I have come to realize that the rediscovery of the Book of Giants has wrought a new interest in ancient Jewish apocalyptic literature. Writers such as Lauren T. Stukenbrook and Andrei Orlov have dedicated exhaustive efforts to filling in the gaps of this fragmented text with references from other ancient writings, including the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. While we certainly don't have it all, the mosaic that exists is therefore enough to provide a coherent narrative, deepening our understanding of ancient Jewish thought. The rediscovery of these texts also kindled some questions concerning the transmission of religious knowledge and the preservation of ancient literature. In his book, The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Bible, theologian James Vanderkam has discussed the significance of those rediscovered texts and how it creates an impact on our understanding of ancient religious traditions. He draws upon such examples as the loss and recovery of texts like the Book of Giants to remind us of the transient nature of history and the need to preserve knowledge from the distant past. The connection between the Book of Giants and other ancient texts. The Book of Giants is not a book that stands on its own. It is closely related to other contemporary Jewish literature, the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. All these writings together fill in the comprehensive story of the Watchers, the Nephilim, and the Great Flood, hence giving a better understanding of the cosmic struggle between good and evil. Their mutual relations have been the object of extensive scholarly debate. Some scholars have suggested, among whom is Andrei Orlov, that the Book of Giants was part of the greater Enochic tradition right from its very beginning, while others suggest that it may have been a separate work assimilated into the greater apocalyptic narrative at some point. At any rate, the Book of Giants conveys particular understanding of how ancient Jews thought of the Nephilim and their role within the cosmic struggle between good and evil. Giants across cultures, a universal theme. The story of giants, rebellion, and eventual defeat is one that crops up not only in Jewish apocalyptic literature, but in the mythology of almost every culture around the world. Such universality and commonality suggests that something in the idea of giants as an embodiment of chaos, disorder, and unregulated power strikes a raw nerve in the human psyche across time and space. The study of such cultural parallels may provide insight into the persistent power of the Nephilim story and its broader archetype of the rebellious giant. The Book of Giants depicts the Nephilim as beings that act against divine authority and wreak chaos upon human people. This rebellion is answered with the destruction of the Nephilim by the forces of heaven, standing for order over chaos. This kind of structure is emulated in many other ancient cultures' mythologies, in which giants, titans, or otherwise enormous beings act in roles antagonistic to the gods or other massive divine figures. It finds one of the most famous usages of this archetype in Greek mythology. The Titans were a race of giants born from the primordial beings of Gaia or Earth and Uranus or Sky. They were the first rulers of the cosmos, having overthrown their father Uranus under the leadership of Cronus, and established their reign. Inevitably, the reign of the Titans was marked by chaos and brutality until it brought them to their knees at the hands of the gods of Olympus. Led by Zeus, the Olympians confronted the Titans in a great fight called the Titanomachy, which they won, after which they threw the Titans into Tartarus, a very deep and dark place where only the most degraded and dangerous were sent. In another myth, the gods of Olympus again had to fight another race of giants, the Gigantes, who wanted to take their place. This battle, similarly to the first, was called the Gigantomachy and also ended in defeat for the giants. Indeed, drawing an analogy with the story of the Nephilim, the famous scholar Walter Burkert made a comparison with Gigantomachy as it is represented in the Book of Giants. Indeed, in both cases, a race of unruly giants rebels against the accepted divine world order and then defeated by the heavenly camp. The Gigantomachy, as with the story of the Nephilim, is a metaphor for chaos versus order, between raw, destructive power on the part of the giants and more civilized, lawful power on the part of the gods. Norse mythology is similarly replete with giants, known as the Jotnar, who are primarily portrayed as the enemies of the gods. Therein, the Jotnar are associated with chaos, ruin, and nature not yet tamed. They are also frequently at variance with the gods of Asgard, particularly Thor, who is too often represented as a giant slayer. The last great battle of doom, Ragnarök, will supposedly be one final conflict between the gods and the Jotnar, where the world will end and most of the gods and giants alike are killed. Their position in Norse mythology is symbolic. They symbolize the untamed, chaotic forces of nature that lie beyond human culture. This is evidenced from the book by John Lindo titled Norse Mythology, A Guide to the Gods, Heroes, Rituals, and Beliefs, where it is said that Jotnar was opposed to those only representing order, civilization, and human culture. Like the Nephilim in the Book of Giants, the Jotnar are outside of the established cosmic order, and their rebellion against the gods leads predictably to their defeat. Even among the various mythologies of North American indigenous peoples, we find tales of giants who roam the earth, often causing destruction and chaos. Giants are hazardous because they bring storms, famine, and other natural calamities in most Native American traditions. The Unctehi is truly a type of giant water serpents in the traditions of the Sioux, believed to have flooded the world in times past and brought destruction upon mankind. The equivalent creature is the Wendigo in Algonquin folklore, a giant cannibalistic spirit related to winter's cruelty and the penalties of greed and profligacy. As in other cultures' mythologies, the stories of Native American tales of giants tend to explain the relation or sometimes wreak havoc on the balance between humanity and nature. Many times, giants come as a lesson in Native American stories, depicting what happens when the overstepping happens because of one's greed, defiance, or misuse of power. It is this type of rebel giant archetype that the famous historian of religion Mircea Eliade writes about in his book, The Myth of the Eternal Return. Myths of giants and their defeat at the hands of divine forces offer support for a cyclical view of history, whereby chaotic periods of history are inevitably succeeded by renovation and restoration. The giants, representing untrammeled power and revolt, are bound to be defeated by ordered structure, so that the cleansing and rebirth of the world may take place. As Eliade explains, it reflects why giant myths are such a pervasive part of cultures around the world. These tales show a primordial human concern with the fragility of order and the ever-present threat of chaos. In such stories, giants are defeated by the gods or divine forces to restore the balance of the world so that life is able to go forward. The universality of the giant myths suggests that the Nephilim story in the Book of Giants is part of an infinitely broader human narrative of the struggle between chaos and order, rebellion and justice. Whether in ancient Jewish traditions, the giants of Greek, Norse, or Native American lore serve as a powerful metaphor for the perils of bucking the natural order and of balance in the world. The Nephilim, modern representations of giants in popular culture. Though the story of the Nephilim and the giants originates from the pages of an ancient text, their impressions continued to resonate with modern popular culture. The image of the giant as a powerful, often destructive force would continue to be reinvented across different forms of media, from literature and film to video games and art. These modern versions of giants do stem from the same concepts as in the Book of Giants: the concept of strength, rebellion, and not being able to escape the retribution that occurs as a result of all the actions carried out against the laws of nature or the gods themselves. Giants in modern literature are mostly used to represent ancient power and knowledge that is lost to human memory. One of the more famous examples can be found in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, where the Ents, a race of giant tree beings, represent the forces of nature, both ancient and wild. Similar to the Nephilim, the Ents are beings of immense strength and wisdom. However, they are also slow to anger and alienated from the rest of the world of men. As Tom Shippey points out in his book, J.R.R. Tolkien, author of the century, Ents reflect a kind of nostalgic regret for that moment when giants roamed the earth, an age when natural forces were much stronger and at the mercy of man less. Similarly, giants in the George R.R. Martin books of A Song of Ice and Fire appear as brutish yet strong beings that live at the edges of society. Like the Nephilim, they are powerful but unsophisticated creatures. Their existence is a leftover from a forgotten era, and their existence challenges the established order of the world of human beings. As Valerie Estelle Frankel, a scholar of the mythological archetypes in A Song of Ice and Fire, would suggest, Martin's giants stand for the risks that come from acquiring too much power and strength. The greater the power, the more probable it will be used to destroy. The concept of giants is more often than not used in modern film and television as a metaphor of humanity's struggle against the odds. A very nice example is the Japanese anime and manga franchise Attack on Titan, which offers an apocalyptic world where gigantic beings, otherwise termed as titans, continue a dreadful fight with humanity. Just as the Nephilim did, the Titans are also creatures of colossal physical strength, yet with limited intellect. The Titan comes across as some mindless, destructive forces that are representative of the fear of annihilation. As scholar Takayuki Tatsumi also stated in his analysis of Attack on Titan, the Titans can be seen more along the lines as a metaphor for the destructive powers of untrammeled power. The same can be seen in the Book of Giants. The Nephilim were destroyed due to their pride and against the laws of heaven. So too do the Titans here serve to remind one that power, if not kept in check, will ultimately create chaos and destruction. Within the Harry Potter series, giants are also demonstrated as creatures that exist within an anti-gametial fringe. They are not malicious creatures. However, their enormous proportions and strength make them dangerous to wizards and non-magical people alike. This is demonstrated in the character Hagrid, half-giant yet wholly capable of communication with both worlds. His story well captures the tension between these two worlds. Not unlike the story of the Nephilim shall be shared to explain a consequence of the intermingling between angels and humans. But giants find their place in video games too. There, they often act as some kind of boss's terrible enemies which one needs to defeat to move further in the game. Examples include games such as Shadow of the Colossus and God of War, where giants are depicted as huge, nearly godlike creatures that present an impossible challenge to the protagonist. Shadow of the Colossus demands that a player vanquish a series of enormous monsters to save a young girl's life. Each fight with these giants represents either skill or strategy, per se, symbolizing one's fight against odds. According to scholar Phelan Parker in his work on the narrativity of video games, giants in Shadow of the Colossus represent the tension between humanity and nature, much like the Nephilim in ancient Jewish literature represents the consequences of disrupting the balance between the divine and the mortal. For example, the main character of God of War, Kratos, had to fight with several giants and gods to accomplish his purpose of taking revenge on his family. The notion of giants in God of War as mighty beings who rebel against the authority of gods is picked from the story of Nephilim in the Book of Giants. Both stories develop a theme of rebellion against divine authorities and the repercussions of that rebellion. The recurrence of giants in modern media can be understood in the light of Joseph Campbell's explanation of the hero's journey in his work, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Campbell's hero's journey is the struggle against apparently insurmountable obstacles that the protagonist has to face, be the obstacles in the form of formidable enemies or otherwise. Giants in this context function as the ultimate test for the hero, who embodies both physical and moral challenges to be overcome. In storytelling, both ancient and modern, giants are considered to be forces of chaos and destruction that one has to quell to redeem the world into balance. Be it in the form of the Nephilim of the Book of Giants or even the Titans of Attack on Titan, These gigantic beings remind one how dangerous unfettered power can be, and also that a balance should be kept between the human and the divine. The Nephilim and modern spiritual warfare. However, the deep ramifications of the Nephilim and their giants are within so many of the spiritual beliefs of the modern day, especially in the treatment of spiritual warfare through interpretations in Christianity. Even now, in many Christian traditions, the Nephilim have been viewed as being the origin of demons, spiritual entities that continue to influence Earth today. That belief that after the Great Flood, the spirits of the Nephilim became demons links into a broader narrative of an ongoing struggle between good and evil, heaven and hell. Theology of spiritual warfare. Michael Heiser on Nephilim's role in demonology. Theologian Michael Heiser has written on the connection of the Nephilim with modern beliefs about demons. According to Heiser, the story of the Nephilim provides a context which illuminates both the origin of spiritual evil and what role fallen angels play in an ongoing battle between good and evil. According to Heiser, this rebellion of the Watchers and the creation of the Nephilim create a backdrop for spiritual warfare, which continues down to the present day. The Nephilim, born of the union of angels and humans, were representative of a corruption in God's created order. When their physical bodies were destroyed in the flood, their spirits left behind now roam the earth, as it were, wreaking havoc among humans as demons attempting to lead men and women away from God. This sets the understanding of the Nephilim within a wider Christian understanding of spiritual warfare. Demons are often conceptualized as fallen angels, rebellious spirits that continue to have influence in the world, always seeking to tempt humans and thwart the work of God. The Nephilim, being the offspring of fallen angels, fell into this schema as beings whose very existence was a defiance of divine authority. It is this concept of spiritual warfare that the theologian Gregory Boyd explores in his book God at War. It is a cosmic battle between good and evil, using the world for its battlefield. In other words, Boyd also claims that the world is a place in which spiritual forces in general are continuously at work, influencing human behavior, including current history. The story of the Nephilim, then, in such a light, constitutes one early chapter in this continuous struggle. The Nephilim were a symbol of the forces of chaos and rebellion that pushed back against God's rule in their defiance of God's law and spreading corruption to all the earth. Their demonic reconfiguration, following physical destruction, underlines the resilient nature of evil even in apparent defeat. As Boyd contends, the story of the Nephilim forms one of those reminders that the battle between good and evil is anything but over. That is a spiritual fight that has been ongoing through the ages, including in the hearts of men. The legend of the Nephilim and their ultimate metamorphosis into demons has become a powerful metaphor for many a modern Christian of the struggle that continuously wages against temptation and sin. It is in this light that the Nephilim could be said to represent spiritual forces of rebellion that seek to remove men from their relationship with God. This view of the Nephilim as agents of temptation finds great resonance in many Christian circles. Philosophical thinkers like C.S. Lewis in his work The Screwtape Letters have debated extensively on the thought that spiritual forces are constantly at work, tempting humankind away from faith into sin. The Nephilim are conceptually the final example of what happens when divine laws are defied and the natural order disrupted. In that sense, this is not some ancient myth of the Nephilim, but a cautionary tale that still resounds in the minds of believers to this day. The spiritual war initiated with the Watchers and their giant offspring is very much still being fought today, and the text of the Book of Giants retains immediate relevance for those seeking to understand the nature of temptation, sin, and the consequences of defying God's will. As we've explored in the Book of Giants, the story of the Nephilim speaks more than an ancient tale of rebellion and destruction. It's a serious warning against disobedience to divine authorities, continued good versus evil, and spiritual battles even into today. From their creation to their demise, the legacy of giants still speaks loudly in today's beliefs and mythologies, even within spiritual warfare. If you found this exploration fascinating, strap yourself in for what's about to come. In our next video, The 10 Most Mysterious Beings in the Bible, we take an in-depth plunge into other ancient figures, still making theologians and scholars scratch their heads. So make sure to drop by for some more incredible discoveries with us. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share with anyone curious about ancient secrets, spiritual warfare, and stories that shape our beliefs. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.